Isn't that a stone circle? I wonder which one it is.
I see that circle every time I come back. I don't know which one it is either.
Maeve is a milestone work in the history of Irish cinema for several significant reasons. The film is one of the earliest examples of Irish national cinema, being part of the first wave movement in the late 70s and early 80s. The works of Pat Murphy, the writer and co-director of Maeve, along with films by Joe Comerford, Cathal Black, Bob Quinn, Thaddeus O'Sullivan and Kieran Hickey, illustrate the country and its people in a self-reflective and critical manner, in contrast to the way the majority of foreign directors have depicted Ireland on screen before and since. Murphy was the only female filmmaker of this movement, and Maeve is notable for being, to quote Tara Brady of the Irish Times, Ireland's first bona fide feminist film. It is a highly provocative picture in its political stance, one that examines the Northern Ireland conflict from a unique female point of view and vigorously debates this issue in a manner that raises many questions while providing few answers. It is important to note that while the feminist viewpoint is the most prominent, the film does not limit itself to this singular position. Maeve uses the escalating violence which occurred in Northern Ireland as a basis to explore a multitude of social, political and personal conflicts, all of which are equally ingrained with historical oppression, prejudice and intransigence. In doing so, it touches upon how several groups, men and women, young and old, parents and children, those actively involved or on the periphery, are all affected in some way, and the lasting impact the conflict has or will have on their mental and social well-being. The title character is a young woman who is now living in London and returns home to Belfast to visit her family, who are Catholic.
Open this fucking door, security forces! You know this one? Says she lives here.
She does live here. She's my sister. She's only been working late.
Well, who else lives in this house?
My mother and father. They're asleep.
Maeve witnesses how the Troubles, the euphemistic term used for the Northern Ireland conflict, remains an incessantly foreboding presence in the lives of her family and others. Her father, never involved in the fight yet frequently a victim of its repercussions, is a shadow of his former self. Her mother seems to be a reserved and quiet soul, but there is immense bitterness and frustration simmering under the surface. Her younger sister Roisin, while fearless and strong-willed, has accepted intimidation and misogyny as simply a way of life. Another significant character is Maeve's former lover, Liam, who is conflicted in his desire to live up to what others have done in the past for the cause. Maeve's presence in the city conjures up adolescent memories of events which collectively caused her departure. Her return also reignites personal tensions which have been festering in her absence. Maeve is an ambitious, challenging and confrontational work. The Troubles had been subject to screen dramas before, but few, if any, were as radical in perspective or execution. Since the presence of the British Armed Forces was considered to be in favour of Protestants and Unionists rather than impartial, it is unsurprising that they are resented by the principal characters, who are Catholic. But besides this hostility, there are also clashes within the Catholic and Republican factions over nationalism and activism, as well as the influence of institutional religion and generational differences.
You see, when I was his age, I'd already done time for shooting up a border post.
I know his trouble. He's one of those revolutionaries who don't want to get shot.
Each of these struggles overlap and impact on one another, interconnecting in the discrimination against the rights and opinions of women. The interactions with British soldiers are fraught with intimidation and humiliation for anyone within this community, with each member of the community eyed with suspicion and distrust. But when female characters are approached, this persecution can be further intensified with leering, sexualized overtones. This is particularly evident in the sequence when Roisin is walking alone late one night after working in a bar. First, there are unidentified male voices shouting aggressively at her from the shadows.
Stand still.
Right, what's your name?
The roughness with which her handbag is snatched away and searched.
What are you doing this time anyway?
I was working. I work in a bar.
The sniggering insinuation that she is a sex worker, and how one soldier, after some small talk, tries to put his arm around her.
What are you frightened for? Nobody's going to hurt you.
Come on. What's a bloody panic?
There is further sexual harassment detailed in the story that Roisin tells about a soldier letting himself into a house during a party and getting into bed with her and a friend as they slept.
Anyway, he says to us, I haven't seen my wife in 6 months, and I'm dying for a fuck. So make up your mind which one of you it's gonna be.
Why didn't you run out?
Because he had his rifle in bed with him.
A male attempting to assert power over a female with intimidation also takes place in one of the flashback sequences, when an adult unionist questions an adolescent Maeve while she is seated alone in her father's van. Interactions with Republican figures are also fraught with patronising attitudes towards women. This is evident in the flashback sequence in which Maeve's uncle invites Maeve and Liam to join his group of friends in a bar.
I never realised how much he wanted to forget who he was and put it all behind him until he got married. Dead respectable she was. A right bitch. Bloody puke.
After a few drinks, he begins to talk about Maeve's mother in disparaging terms, and goes on to tell, for nostalgic amusement, the story of how his attempt to conceal some explosives resulted in Maeve's father, who had no involvement whatsoever, being arrested and serving a prison sentence.
That's my father you're talking about.
Sit down, will you? I'll tell you a bloody story.
When Maeve protests, she is considered overly emotional. Most memorably, there is the heated discussion between Maeve and Liam in the present day, in which she states her views of why feminism and nationalism cannot align.
Being a woman is a nationality I carry around with me. The time when women were spectators is long gone. You are closer to the women here, because they're fighting for freedom like you. They've demanded that the aims of the revolution include them. And if when this war is over, their position's still the same, they'll recognise you as the next stage in their struggle.
Since there are multiple struggles within struggles presented in the film, no simple or easy resolutions can emerge. By the time the end credits roll, none of these arguments have resolutions. It will come as little surprise that Pat Murphy cites playwright Bertolt Brecht and filmmaker Jean-Luc Godard as influences on Maeve. In theatre, Brecht established the estrangement effect, which was most notably adopted by Godard into cinematic storytelling. This distancing concept refuses to allow the viewer to completely lose themselves in the narrative, forcing them to be aware and therefore conscious of the content as a whole. Maeve follows this concept with a fractured, non-linear narrative with no discernible stylistic changes between the flashbacks and the present-day scenes. It's clinical and precise camera work, which often involves frames within frames. Lack of dramatic music score. In several sequences, Maeve's father, when addressing his daughter, looks directly into the camera's viewpoint.
Well, Don knew he was in no fit state till explained to them that's like, how it was their fault.
And characters describing events in long monologues rather than the filmmakers illustrating them through action. Maeve is an antagonistic work, one that sets out to agitate and cause debate. In a conventional sense, the film can be considered experimental and therefore demanding on the viewer. Upon initial viewing, it may prove to be hard to get a handle on, which is a precise and calculated decision by the creators.